He appeared at his parents' home unexpectedly, in the midst of a storm, but his heart stopped when he saw them sitting on the drenched sidewalk, shivering with cold, while lights glowed from within. Who was inside that house? What he would soon uncover was so staggering it would alter his reality forever. Gabriel had left the capital in the dead of night, aiming to arrive early for a surprise he'd been orchestrating for months. It had been far too long since he'd seen his parents in person, always caught up in the hustle, always closing another deal. Of course, he called every week, asking if they were okay, if they needed anything. Marcelo always assured him that everything was under control, that their parents were well cared for and had no worries. Gabriel had built an empire from the ground up. For years, he worked relentlessly, pulling all-nighters, sacrificing weekends and giving up so much, but it had all paid off. Today, he had money, success, and everything he had ever dreamed of. Finally, he had the time to return home and reconnect with the two people who had believed in him when no one else did. In the backseat of his car was a bag filled with expensive gifts, imported perfume for his mother, a handsome watch for his father, new clothes for both. And in the glove compartment, 2 plane tickets for the trip his parents had always longed to take but could never afford. Gabriel eagerly anticipated the look on their faces when he handed them the tickets, his mother's radiant smile, his father's tight embrace. He drove into town as the sun was just beginning to rise. Everything felt both the same and profoundly different. A few new shops had opened, others were shuttered, but the town's soul remained untouched. A wave of nostalgia washed over Gabriel, tightening his chest. How many times had he walked these streets as a child? How many times had he run across the small field, playing soccer with friends, until his mother's voice called him in for dinner from the window? As he neared his parents' house, his heart pounded with anticipation. It would be so good to hug them again, to sit at the small kitchen table sipping coffee made by his mother, listening to his father's repeated stories, the simple things he had stopped cherishing when he left to chase his dreams. The street was deserted at that early hour. Gabriel turned the corner and saw the house at the end of the block. That's when he noticed something was off. The house was fully illuminated, every light on, as if people were wide awake inside. A new car, one Gabriel had never seen, was parked in the driveway. He found it odd, but assumed it might belong to his brother Marcelo, who must have bought a new vehicle and was visiting their parents. But then Gabriel saw something else, something that made his blood run cold. By the gate, seated on the sidewalk, were 2 figures huddled together, covered with a tattered piece of plastic, clinging to one another. Gabriel slowed the car, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. Who were those people? Why were they sitting on the ground in the frigid dawn air? He parked a few meters from the house and got out slowly, still struggling to understand. As he drew closer, his heartbeat quickened. Something was terribly wrong here. The figures stirred as they heard his footsteps. One of them lifted their head, and in that instant, Gabriel forgot how to breathe. It was his father, Antonio, wearing the same frayed jacket he'd had for years. His face weary, his eyes sunken, his beard unshaven. And beside him, huddled under the wet plastic, was Clara, his mother, her hair disheveled, her hands trembling, her lips purple from the cold. Gabriel was frozen in place. His mind refused to process the image. His parents, on the ground, in front of their own home, sheltering under a flimsy piece of plastic to escape the morning chill. His father struggled to his feet, positioning himself in front of his wife as if to shield her from a threat. He hadn't recognized his son yet. It was dark, and Gabriel had changed. He'd gained a little weight. His hairstyle was different. Gabriel took a step forward, his voice cracking. "Dad?" Antonio's eyes widened as he stared at his son in disbelief. Clara rose too, clinging to her husband's arm for support. She brought a hand to her mouth, her eyes instantly filling with tears. "Gabriel, is that you, my son?" And just like that, a dam broke. Gabriel rushed to his parents, embracing them both at once, holding them tight, feeling their cold, trembling bodies against his chest. His mother began to sob, a deep, gut-wrenching cry that tore everything from within. His father held onto his son but couldn't speak, only shiver, from cold, from emotion, from relief. What is happening here? Why are you on the street? Why are you on the ground?" Gabriel looked at his parents, and only now, under the streetlight, could he see them clearly. The old, dirty, torn clothes, the calloused and wounded hands, the swollen feet and shoes that were falling apart. Old backpacks lay on the ground with a few belongings inside, and that ridiculous plastic sheet that offered no real protection. "Son, you came back. You really came back," his mother repeated, as if she couldn't believe it. Gabriel took off his coat and draped it over his mother. She was ice cold. They both were. He looked around, trying to understand. The house, their house, stood there, fully lit and warm, and they were out here. "Why aren't you inside? Did you have a fight with someone? What happened?" His father lowered his head, the shame on his face painful to witness. Clara tried to speak, but her voice failed. She just shook her head and cried harder. It was then that Gabriel looked at the house again. He glanced at the illuminated windows and saw a shadow in the living room curtain. Someone was inside. Someone had heard the commotion and came to peek. The curtain moved slightly, and for a split second, Gabriel saw a face. It was Fernanda, his sister-in-law, Marcelo's wife. She was looking out. She had seen him with his parents. And when she realized Gabriel had seen her too, she quickly closed the curtain. A rage he had never known surged from his stomach to his throat. Fernanda was in there, inside his parents' home, warm and comfortable, while his parents were out here, in the cold, on the ground, sleeping on the street. "Are they in there?" Gabriel asked, his voice trembling with fury. "Are Marcelo and Fernanda inside your house?" His father didn't answer, just squeezed his wife's shoulder and stared at the ground. His mother wiped her tears with the sleeve of the coat Gabriel had given her. "Son, it's a long story," she began, but her voice trailed off again. Gabriel looked at the house one more time. He saw the light on in the living room, the new car in the driveway, the beautifully renovated and well-kept house. Then he looked at his parents on the sidewalk, like two people who had nowhere left to go in the world. And in that moment, he understood. He didn't need an explanation. He didn't need words. He looked into his mother's eyes and saw everything he needed to see: pain, shame, abandonment, betrayal. Their own children had done this to them. Their own children had put them on the street. Gabriel grabbed his phone, his hands shaking with rage, shock, and a mix of emotions he couldn't process. He called Marcelo. It rang and rang, no answer. He called again. Nothing. On the third try, the fifth call, Marcelo answered, his voice drowsy. "Hello? Open this door, now." Silence on the other end. "Gabriel, I said open this door right now." Gabriel hung up and looked at his parents. His mother was clutching his arm, afraid of what was about to happen. His father tried to say something, but Gabriel raised his hand. "We'll talk later. Right now you're going inside this house. You're going to take a hot shower. You're going to eat something, and then I'm going to find out what the hell happened here." The porch light flickered on, and the door opened slowly. Marcelo appeared on the threshold. He looked at his brother, then at his parents on the ground, and had the audacity to ask, "Gabriel, what are you doing here?" Gabriel climbed the front steps, coming face to face with his brother. The rage he felt in that moment was so intense he had to take a deep breath to keep from doing something reckless. "The right question is, what are they doing out here while you're in here?" Marcelo stood frozen in the doorway for a few seconds, processing his brother's presence. He hadn't expected this. No one had. Gabriel never called when he was coming to town. In fact, Gabriel never came back. Always too busy, always with excuses, always sending money but never showing up in person. Come in," Marcelo said, opening the door wider, trying to force a smile. "What a great surprise, brother. You didn't say you were coming." Gabriel didn't move. He just stared at his brother with an expression Marcelo had never seen before. It was a mix of disappointment, anger, and something worse, something that looked like disgust. "I asked you a question. What are our parents doing on the street while you're in here?" Marcelo's smile vanished. He glanced over Gabriel's shoulder and saw their parents still on the sidewalk, huddled together. When he looked back at his brother, his face had completely changed. The fake friendliness was gone. replaced by pure irritation. Look, Gabriel, it's complicated. You don't know how it is. You're not here. You don't see the day-to-day. Then explain it to me. Explain why our parents, who raised us, who worked their entire lives so we could have food to eat, are sleeping on the sidewalk like dogs. Marcelo sighed, ran a hand through his hair, and glanced inside the house as if seeking help. They didn't want to follow the house rules, Gabriel. It's as simple as that. We have young children here. We have a routine. We can't be looking after two stubborn old people who don't obey anything. Gabriel felt his blood boil. Stubborn old people. Marcelo had just called their own parents stubborn old people, as if they were a problem, a burden. Gabriel pushed his brother aside and entered the house. What he saw inside made everything worse. The house was completely different, utterly unrecognizable. The simple home where they had grown up, with its old furniture, peeling walls, and cracked floors, was gone. In its place was a house straight out of a magazine. Gleaming porcelain floors, new, modern, expensive furniture, a huge television on the wall, a leather sofa, a beautiful dining table, a chandelier, and expensive curtains. Gabriel walked through the living room as if in a strange land. He touched the sofa. It was brand new, still carrying that store smell. He looked into the kitchen. It had been completely remodeled. New cabinets, a modern refrigerator, a stainless steel stove, a granite countertop. You renovated the house, Gabriel said, turning to his brother. It wasn't a question, it was a statement. Marcelo closed the door and crossed his arms. Fernanda appeared in the hallway wearing an expensive robe. She looked at her brother-in-law and forced a sheepish smile. Hi, Gabriel. What a surprise to see you here. Gabriel ignored her, keeping his eyes fixed on his brother. I asked how much this renovation cost. Look, Gabriel, that's none of your business. The house is ours now. We can do what we want with it. And that's when something clicked in Gabriel's mind. The house is ours now. Their parents' house. How could it be theirs now? What do you mean the house is yours? Marcelo and Fernanda exchanged a glance. She shrugged, as if to say there was no point in hiding it anymore. Marcelo sighed and went to a piece of furniture in the living room. He opened a drawer and pulled out a folder. He tossed it onto the coffee table. The documents are in there. The house was transferred to my name a few months ago. All legal, all above board. Gabriel picked up the folder and opened it. There was a power of attorney signed by his father. Antonio had given Marcelo power of attorney to handle bureaucratic matters. And under that was a deed. The house had been transferred to Marcelo's name. It had the notary's stamp. It had everything. Dad signed this? He did. You can see his signature right there. But did he know you were going to transfer the house to your name? Marcelo didn't answer. Fernanda huffed and sat on the new sofa, crossing her legs. Gabriel, let's be realistic here. Your parents are old. They can't manage a house anymore. They can't pay bills. They can't do anything. We took on the responsibility. We brought them to live here with us. But then they started complaining about everything. They didn't like the rules. They didn't like anything. What rules? Normal rules. Fernanda raised her voice. Not making noise when the kids are sleeping. Not having visitors without telling us. Not touching things in the kitchen. Not wandering around the house at night. Basic things. Gabriel stared at his sister-in-law, unable to believe what he was hearing. Rules. They had imposed rules on their own parents inside the house that belonged to them. And when they didn't follow your rules, you put them on the street? They chose to leave, Marcelo shouted. We didn't kick anyone out. We said if they didn't like it, they could find another place. And they did. They left because they're stubborn. Gabriel closed his eyes, took a deep breath, trying to control the rage building inside him. But then he remembered something that made everything even worse. Marcelo, I send you money every month. I send you money to take care of our parents. I send a good amount, an amount that can support them comfortably. Marcelo looked at the floor. Where is that money? Silence. I asked, where is the money I send every month? Fernanda stood up from the sofa, annoyed. We used the money to renovate the house, Gabriel, to get it into decent shape. This place was falling apart. We invested in the family's assets. Family assets? Gabriel let out a humorless laugh. You just said the house is yours now. So you used my money, which I sent for my parents, to renovate your house? It's not like that, Marcelo began. It's exactly like that. I sent money for my parents to have comfort, to buy food, medicine, clothes, and you took that money and spent it on renovations, on a leather sofa, on a new television. Gabriel threw the folder back on the table and looked around once more. That expensive flooring, that huge television, all that new furniture, all paid for with the money he sent for his parents. And his parents were outside in the cold with old clothes, torn shoes, sleeping on the ground. How much did you spend on this renovation? That's not your... How much? Marcelo swallowed hard. About 60,000. Gabriel was stunned. 60,000. He had been sending money for almost 2 years. He did a quick mental calculation. He had sent much more than 60,000. He had sent nearly 100,000 in total. And the rest? I sent almost 100,000 in these 2 years. Where's the rest? Fernanda went back to the sofa, picked up her phone, and started scrolling as if the conversation had nothing to do with her. Marcelo looked at his wife, then at his brother. We had bills, Gabriel. We have kids. We needed a better car. That old one wasn't cutting it anymore. You bought a car with the money meant for our parents? We needed it. They needed it more. Gabriel's shout echoed through the house. Fernanda stood up again, irritated. Look here, Gabriel. We took care of your parents for 2 years. 2 years. While you were living your rich entrepreneur life, we were here cleaning up their messes, feeding them, putting up with their complaints. We deserved some compensation. Gabriel looked at his sister-in-law as if she were a creature from another planet. Compensation? You think taking care of your own parents is a service that deserves compensation? They're not my parents, they're yours and Marcelo's. And you're married to Marcelo. They're your in-laws. They're family. Family that creates work, she replied with cynicism. And it was in that moment that Gabriel understood everything. It wasn't just greed. It wasn't just selfishness. It was worse than that. Marcelo and Fernanda didn't see their parents as family. They saw them as a burden, a problem, something they had to tolerate until it was over. And now that they had the house, now that they had renovated it all with Gabriel's money, they no longer had to pretend to care. Gabriel looked at his brother. Marcelo stood with his arms crossed, his face grim, the defensive posture of someone who knows they've done wrong but won't admit it. I'm taking them from here now. Great, Marcelo said. Take them. We're tired of putting up with them anyway. And I'm going to fight for my rights. I'm going to prove you took this house illegally. I'm going to prove you misused my money. And I'm going to make you pay for every second my parents spent on the street. Fernanda laughed. It was a short, mocking laugh. What are you going to do, Gabriel? Sue us? Spend a fortune on lawyers? And in the end, what will you get? The house is already in his name. There are documents. Everything is in order. You won't get anything. Gabriel took a step toward her. Fernanda flinched slightly on the sofa. His voice came out low, controlled, but loaded with a cold rage. You have no idea what I'm capable of when someone messes with my family. He turned his back and walked toward the door. Before leaving, he stopped and looked at his brother one last time. Enjoy this house. Enjoy this new furniture. Enjoy everything you got by stealing from our parents, because when I'm done with you, you're going to lose everything. And I'll make sure the whole town knows what kind of person you are. Gabriel slammed the door, ran down the steps, and went straight to his parents. They were still there, huddled together, trembling. When they saw their son returning, his mother tried to stand. We're leaving here, now. Gabriel helped them both up, grabbed the old backpacks from the ground and led them to the car. He settled them in the back seat and turned the heater on full blast. His mother was crying softly. His father stared out the window with the vacant expression of someone who has lost everything. Gabriel got in the car, gripped the steering wheel tightly, and looked in the rearview mirror at his parents, old, tired, broken, but still there, still alive, still together. I promise you one thing, he said, looking at them in the mirror. No one will ever make you go through this again. Never again. And as he drove through the city looking for a hotel, Gabriel was already planning every step of what he would do next. Marcelo had made a mistake, a gigantic mistake. He had underestimated his brother, and now he was going to pay dearly for it. Gabriel secured a room at the best hotel in the city. He took his parents upstairs and arranged for the hotel to provide clean clothes, extra blankets, and a hot meal. His mother couldn't stop shivering, even in the heated room. His father sat on the edge of the bed, staring at his own hands as if he didn't recognize them. While they waited for the food to arrive, Gabriel went into the bathroom and turned on the tap for the bathtub. Hot water, good soap, soft towels, simple things his parents hadn't had in weeks. When he returned to the room, he saw his mother opening her old backpack, trying to find a less dirty piece of clothing to wear. That's when Gabriel saw it. Inside the backpack, among the few old clothes, was a thick, yellowed envelope, worn at the edges from time. His mother carefully took the envelope and clutched it to her chest, as if it were the most valuable thing in the world. "Mom, what is that?" Clara looked at her husband. Antonio nodded slowly, as if to say there was no point in hiding anything anymore. She took a deep breath and handed the envelope to her son. "There's something we never told anyone. Not Marcelo, not Fernanda. We've kept this our whole lives, waiting for the right moment." Gabriel took the envelope. It was heavy, filled with documents. He opened it slowly and pulled out the papers. They were old, some yellowed with age, others with faded ink. There was an old deed, a labor lawsuit settled decades ago, hand-drawn maps and certificates. "Your grandfather won a piece of land in a lawsuit many years ago," his father began to explain, his voice tired. "It was a worthless area at the time. Far from the city, no paved roads, nothing. He accepted it as payment because he had no choice. It was documented, but never properly registered." Gabriel looked at the papers, trying to understand. His grandfather's name was there, along with the description of the land and its coordinates. He took out his phone and typed in the address. He opened the map, zoomed in, and felt his heart race. The land his grandfather had received as a worthless plot decades ago was now located in one of the most exclusive areas of the city. There were commercial buildings, companies, banks, and shops all around. The city had grown and swallowed that area, turning it into pure gold. "Do you know how much this is worth today?" His parents looked at each other. His mother wiped away a tear. "We never wanted to touch it, son. We were afraid of losing it in court, of someone taking it from us. So we kept it. We thought about leaving it for the three of you when we were gone, so you'd have something of value." Gabriel looked at the papers again. That land was worth millions, millions, and his parents had lived their entire lives in poverty, working until their hands bled, enduring hardship, without knowing they had a fortune hidden in an old envelope. But what hurt more was something else. Marcelo and Fernanda had kicked their parents out, taken their home, stolen the money Gabriel sent, and they had done it all without knowing their parents had something far more valuable. If they had known, they would have been even worse. "Why did you never tell us this before?" His father stood up and went to the window, looking out at the city lights. "We were afraid you'd become greedy. We wanted you to work, to build your lives through effort. We didn't want you waiting for an inheritance." His mother took Gabriel's hand. "But you, my son, you were always different. You chased your dreams. You built everything on your own. We are so proud of you." Gabriel hugged his mother. She smelled of rain, old clothes, and suffering, but she was his mother, and nothing else mattered. "How many days were you on the street?" The silence that followed was heavy. His mother pulled away from the hug and sat on the bed again. His father remained looking out the window. 3 weeks, his mother said softly. 3 weeks. Gabriel felt a tightness in his chest. 3 weeks sleeping on the sidewalk. 3 weeks in the cold. 3 weeks without a proper bath, without proper food, without dignity. And before that, when you were living with them? That's when the whole story began to emerge, and each word was a stab to Gabriel's heart. His parents explained that at first it seemed like it would work. Marcelo had convinced them to sign the power of attorney, saying it would make it easier to pay bills and handle paperwork. His parents trusted him and signed. A few weeks later, Marcelo announced he had transferred the house to his name to protect the asset, that it was for the best, that they didn't need to worry about a thing. Initially, Marcelo and Fernanda even pretended to be attentive, but then the rules started. They couldn't make noise after 8 p.m. They couldn't watch TV in the living room. They couldn't cook whenever they felt like it. They had set times to wake up, to sleep, to eat. They put us in the small room out back, his father said, still looking out the window. That tiny room where we used to store tools. They threw an old mattress on the floor and told us that was our room. His mother continued. She said they weren't allowed to eat at the table with the family. They had to eat in the kitchen after everyone else was finished. Leftovers, always leftovers. One day I felt sick, his mother said, wiping her tears. I needed medicine. I asked Fernanda to take me to the clinic. She said she was busy, that I should wait. I waited all day. She never took me. And when we complained, his father turned from the window to look at his son. When we said it wasn't right, that we felt humiliated, Marcelo would yell. He'd say we were ungrateful, that they had opened their home to us, that we should be thankful instead of complaining. Gabriel's hands were clenched, his nails digging into his palms. He needed to hear everything, needed to know everything, but each word was like poison. And the money I sent. His parents looked at each other again. We never saw that money, son. Marcelo said you weren't sending anything, that you had forgotten about us, that you were rich and happy with your life, and didn't want anything to do with the family anymore. And it was then that Gabriel understood the full extent of his brother's cruelty. They hadn't just stolen the house. They hadn't just humiliated their parents. They had destroyed Gabriel's image in his parents' minds. They had made his parents believe their youngest son had abandoned them. Did you believe them? Not at first, his mother said. But then months went by, and you didn't show up. You didn't call. We started to think it was true. But I did call. I called every week. I spoke to Marcelo. He never passed the phone to us. He'd say you were busy, that you'd call back later, that you sent your love. And we would wait for a call that never came. Gabriel took out his phone and opened his banking app. He went to his transfer history. It was all there. Every month, like clockwork, he had sent money to Marcelo, large sums. And under each transfer, Gabriel had added a note to take care of our parents. Everything recorded, everything documented. He showed the phone screen to his parents. His mother covered her mouth with her hand. His father shook his head in disbelief. He stole everything, son. He stole everything and made us believe you didn't care anymore. There was a knock on the door. It was room service with the food. Gabriel had them set everything on the table. When the employee left, he sat with his parents and made sure they ate first. Hot, good, plentiful food. His parents ate slowly, as if they had forgotten what it was like to eat without rushing. While they ate, Gabriel scrolled through his phone, opening his messaging app and reading old conversations with Marcelo. The more he read, the more his anger grew. There were messages where Gabriel asked how their parents were. Marcelo always replied, "They're fine, no worries." Gabriel would ask if they needed anything. Marcelo, "No, everything's good here, Gab." Gabriel would send photos of his projects, his travels, sharing his life. Marcelo would see the messages and not reply. And then Gabriel saw something that made his blood boil. He checked Marcelo's old status updates. There were photos of the renovated house, photos of the new car, photos of the happy family on the leather sofa. And the captions, "New life, achievements, God is faithful." All paid for with Gabriel's money, all while their parents slept in a small room out back. Gabriel closed his phone and looked at his parents finishing their meal. They looked a little better, a little more alive, but the sadness was still in their eyes, in that weary look of those who have suffered too much. "Dad, Mom, I need you to trust me. I'm going to fix this. I'm going to get your house back. I'm going to make them pay for everything, but I need you to let me handle these land documents. No one can know about them, especially not Marcelo and Fernanda. Why? His mother asked. Because if they find out you have this, they'll try to take it too, and I won't let them. But it has to be my way. Do you trust me? They both nodded. His father extended his hand, and Gabriel squeezed it tightly. After his parents went to take their showers, Gabriel took the envelope and photographed every document. He emailed them to himself, stored the originals in the hotel safe, and made a call. Dr. Henrique, this is Gabriel Mendez. I need your services. It's urgent. While he waited for the lawyer to respond, Gabriel looked out the hotel window. Down below, the city slept. Somewhere out there, Marcelo was resting easy in the stolen house, thinking he had won, thinking he had gotten away with it. But what Marcelo didn't know was that the game had just begun, and this time he had messed with the wrong person. Dr. Henrique arrived at the hotel the next morning. He was a serious man in his 50s, with the professional demeanor of someone who had seen it all. Gabriel met him in the suite he had booked and showed him the photos of the land documents on his phone. The lawyer took the device, zoomed in on the images, and began to read each paper with meticulous attention. The more he read, the more his expression changed. He took off his glasses, slowly cleaned the lenses, and put them back on. He looked at Gabriel with a gravity that made his heart tighten. This is worth millions, many millions. I'm talking about a sum that could change an entire family's life for generations. Gabriel already knew this. He had spent the previous night researching land values in the area. That piece of ground his grandfather had received as payment for a labor lawsuit decades ago was now worth something between 8 and 10 million. It was a fortune his parents had held onto their entire lives without even imagining the size of the treasure they were protecting. But there's a serious problem here. Dr. Henrique continued. This land was never officially registered at the property records office. It exists in the lawsuit documents. It has a description. It has everything. But it's missing the formal registration that makes it an actual property. And that's bad. It's very bad, because technically, any direct heir can try to complete this registration, and whoever registers it first gets it. Gabriel felt a chill. But my father is still alive. He's the direct heir of my grandfather. The right is his. Yes, while he's alive, the right is his. But if your brother discovers this land exists and the value it has today, I have no doubt he'll try something. And given his history, it won't be anything legal. That's why this needs to remain in absolute secrecy. Exactly. I'll start the regularization process today, but it will take a few months. In the meantime, you need to keep your parents away from Marcelo. Any contact could be dangerous. And the original documents, where are they? In the safe here at the hotel. Excellent. Don't take them out of there for any reason. When I need them, I'll come get them personally. They shook hands, and Dr. Henrique left. Gabriel stood at the window, looking down at the city. Everything seemed so calm, so normal. But he knew a storm was coming. He could feel it in his bones. After his parents woke up and had breakfast, Gabriel went out to handle some practical matters. His parents needed decent clothes, medication, and basic hygiene products. He went to a large department store downtown and bought everything he could. New clothes, comfortable shoes, thick coats to protect them from the cold. At the pharmacy, he bought his father's blood pressure medication, vitamins, and supplements. As he was returning to the hotel with the full shopping bags, his phone rang. Unknown number. Gabriel answered. Hello? Gabriel, it's Marcelo. Just hearing his brother's voice made Gabriel's anger rise in his throat. What do you want? Look, I've been thinking. We shouldn't fight like this. We're brothers, man. We grew up together. We can resolve this situation in a more civilized way. Civilized? You call putting our parents on the street civilized? I know I messed up, okay? I admit it. But you're not a saint in all this either. You disappeared, Gabriel. You went off to the capital, built your life there, and forgot about us here. Gabriel stopped in the middle of the sidewalk. His brother's audacity knew no bounds. I sent money every month. I paid you to take care of them. Money isn't everything. They needed presence, attention, affection. You couldn't send those things through the bank, could you? I was working, building a company. But even so, I never, ever forgot about our parents. There was a tense silence on the other end of the line. When Marcelo spoke again, his tone was different, more calculating. "Look, I didn't call to fight. I called because I want to propose something. How about we share the responsibilities for real? You take them for a while, I'll take them for a while. We'll take turns. That way no one gets overwhelmed and everyone's happy." Gabriel shook his head in disbelief. Marcelo was trying to negotiate, trying to find a loophole, a way not to lose control completely. "There will be no turns. There will be no deal. I will take care of our parents alone, and you will return their house and all the money you stole." "Stole? That's a heavy word, brother. The house was transferred legally. I have the documents, the notary's stamp, everything. And as for the money, I used it to improve the house where they were living. I did it for them. You did it for yourself, and we'll see what the courts have to say about that." "The courts? You're going to spend a fortune on a lawyer to try to get back a simple little house? Honestly, is it worth it?" The way Marcelo said it, with that dismissive tone, made Gabriel realize something important. His brother was too confident, too calm, as if he knew something Gabriel didn't. "To me, it's worth it. Because it's not about the value of the house. It's about dignity. It's about justice. It's about showing the whole world what kind of person you are." Gabriel hung up on his brother. His hands were trembling, not from fear, but from contained rage. He returned to the hotel, trying to calm down. When he gave the shopping bags to his parents, their reaction made it all worthwhile. His mother picked up a new dress and hugged it to her chest, crying with emotion. His father tried on a comfortable pair of shoes and smiled for the first time in weeks. It was beautiful to see them like this, happy with such simple things. Things that anyone deserved to have, but that had been taken from them by their own son. That afternoon, Gabriel took his parents to lunch at a good restaurant in town. They ate slowly, savoring every bite. Afterward, they walked through the main square, his parents holding hands, with Gabriel by their side, protecting them. For a few hours, it seemed like everything would be okay, that things were finally getting back on track. But when they returned to the hotel late that afternoon, the illusion shattered. A man was standing at the reception. He looked at Gabriel and approached with firm steps. "Gabriel Mendez?" "Who's asking?" The man pulled a wallet from his jacket's inner pocket and showed an ID. "My name is Tavares. I'm a private investigator. I need to ask you a few questions." Gabriel felt his blood run cold. He told his parents to go up to the room and remained in the reception, facing the man. "Questions about what?" "You returned to the city a few days ago. I have information that you've been researching properties in the area, real estate, land, market values. Is that correct?" "Who hired you?" Tavares gave a cynical smile. "You know how our business works. I can't reveal the identity of my clients." But Gabriel didn't need him to say it. He already knew. It was Marcelo. His brother had hired an investigator to find out what he was up to. The phone call from a few hours ago now made sense. Marcelo was fishing for information, trying to understand Gabriel's plan. "I have nothing to say to you." "I understand perfectly, but I have something to say to you. My client is very concerned about your movements. He believes you're planning something against him and has asked me to find out exactly what." "And have you found out yet?" "Not yet, but I will. I always do. That's what they pay me for." Tavares put his wallet away, adjusted his jacket, and left the hotel, leaving a trail of threat in the air. Gabriel ran up to the room and went straight to the safe built into the closet. He entered the code with trembling hands and opened it. The yellowed envelope was there, whole, intact. No one had touched it. Gabriel breathed a sigh of relief and closed the safe again. The documents were secure. Marcelo could be as suspicious as he wanted. He could hire all the investigators in the city, but there was no way for him to find out about the land. There was no way for him to know. At least, that's what Gabriel thought at that moment. That night, after his parents were asleep, Gabriel was on his computer answering some urgent work emails when he heard the bedroom door open slowly. It was his mother, Clara. She was in her robe with the look of someone who had woken up worried. "Son, I'm sorry to bother you, but I need to tell you something that's been eating me up inside." "What is it, Mom? Sit here." She sat on the edge of the bed and nervously fidgeted with her hands. "When we were still living in that house with Marcelo and Fernanda, one day I saw something strange. Marcelo came into the little room where we slept. He thought I wasn't there, but I had come back to get a sweater. He opened our old backpack, the one where we keep the important documents." Gabriel's heart began to beat faster. And what did he do? He spent a long time going through things in there. He took out papers, photographed them with his phone, then put everything back. I stayed quiet, afraid he'd see me. When he left, I went to check, and it looked like everything was in its place. But now I keep thinking, do you think he saw the envelope with the land documents? Gabriel slowly closed his laptop and looked at his mother. When was this? A few days before he put us on the street. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place in Gabriel's mind. Marcelo wasn't just suspicious, he knew. He had seen the documents, photographed them, discovered the land, and was now playing a much more dangerous game than Gabriel had imagined. He picked up his phone and called Dr. Henrique, even though it was almost midnight. "Doctor, sorry for the late hour, but we have a serious problem." The next morning, Dr. Henrique arrived at the hotel with a tense expression. He asked to speak with Gabriel in private. They went to the parking garage where no one could overhear. "Gabriel, I received a notification from the records office yesterday afternoon. Your brother showed up there with a lawyer. He's trying to register your grandfather's land." Gabriel felt the ground give way beneath his feet. "How? Does he have the documents? Copies?" "I don't know how he got them, but he has them. And he's already filed the registration request, claiming your father gave him verbal authorization to manage the family's assets." "That's a lie." "I know it is, but we'll have to prove it in court. And in the meantime, he's obtained a temporary injunction blocking any movement on the land. Neither he nor you can register anything until a judge decides who's right." "And how long will that take?" Dr. Henrique took a deep breath before answering. "It could take months, maybe more than a year. And if he manages to convince the judge that he acted in good faith, he might even get the registration in his name." Gabriel leaned against the car, trying to process it all. Marcelo had found out, made copies of the documents when he snooped in their parents' backpack, and was now using the exact same dirty strategy he'd used with the house. False authorization, manipulated documents, well-told lies. And if he registers it in his name, then he can sell the land, do whatever he wants, and your parents will lose everything all over again. Gabriel looked up at the gray sky. He had come to town to save his parents. He thought he could fix everything, but Marcelo was always one step ahead, always dirtier, always more desperate. What do we do now? We fight with every weapon we have. But I won't lie to you, Gabriel. The situation just got much more complicated. Gabriel returned to the hotel with the weight of the world on his shoulders. He went up to the room where his parents were waiting anxiously. When they saw his expression, they held their breath. "Son, did something happen?" his father, Antonio, asked, rising from his chair. Gabriel looked at them, old, tired, already so hurt by life. How could he tell them that Marcelo had found out about the land? How could he say that their son was about to steal everything from them again? He couldn't speak. He just went to them and hugged them both tightly. And for the first time since this all began, Gabriel felt that maybe he wouldn't be able to protect them, that maybe Marcelo would win this war. And that feeling of powerlessness was worse than any physical pain. The following days were a nightmare. Dr. Henrique worked tirelessly, trying to reverse the injunction Marcelo had obtained, but the judge gave no response. Meanwhile, Gabriel received calls from the lawyer every few days with increasingly worse news. Marcelo had hired a large, expensive law firm specializing in inheritance disputes. They were filing petitions, gathering documents, and building a robust case. But that wasn't even the worst part. 3 days after the injunction, Gabriel went down to the hotel restaurant for breakfast with his parents. As they entered, he felt the stares, many stares, people turning their heads, whispering among themselves, pointing discreetly in their direction. A couple sitting at a nearby table got up and moved, as if their presence was contagious. "Why are these people looking at us like that?" his mother, Clara, asked, holding on to Gabriel's arm. He didn't know, but he was about to find out. When they returned to the room after breakfast, the hotel manager knocked on the door. She had a constrained expression, clearly uncomfortable with what she was about to say. "Mr. Gabriel, I need to speak with you." "Did something happen?" "Look, this is a delicate situation. We've received some complaints from other guests. They're saying they feel uncomfortable with your presence here." Gabriel felt his anger begin to simmer. Uncomfortable with what exactly? The manager glanced at Gabriel's parents and lowered her voice. "There are people saying you took your parents from their home by force, that you're only interested in their inheritance, that your other siblings were taking good care of them, but you showed up and took them away against their will." "Who said that?" "It's circulating all over town, sir, and there are posts on social media that have gone viral. Many people are commenting." Gabriel grabbed his phone and started searching. It didn't take long to find it. A long, well-written, detailed post. The author, Fernanda, his sister-in-law. The text told a completely distorted story. It claimed Gabriel had abandoned his parents years ago, moved to the capital, and never looked back. It said she and Marcelo had taken on the responsibility of caring for the elderly couple, renovating the house to make it more comfortable, giving them all their love and attention. And then, suddenly, Gabriel appeared out of nowhere, forcibly removed them, and took them to an expensive hotel, just to manipulate them and take the family inheritance. The post had hundreds of shares, thousands of comments. People were outraged, cursing Gabriel, calling him a gold digger, an opportunist, an ungrateful son. Some were even calling for the police to be notified to report him for manipulating the elderly. "That's a lie. All of it is a lie," Gabriel told the hotel manager. "I imagine so, sir, but the situation is becoming complicated here. Some guests have asked for their money back, saying they don't want to stay in the same hotel as you. Management is pressuring me to make a decision." "Are you going to kick us out?" "Not yet, but I needed to warn you that the situation is delicate." After the manager left, Gabriel showed the post to his parents. His mother started to cry. His father, Antonio, turned pale, breathing with difficulty. "Dad, are you okay?" Antonio clutched his chest. He was sweating cold, his face completely drained of color. "I'm feeling a pain here, a pressure." Gabriel immediately called for an ambulance. 20 minutes later, he was at the hospital with his parents. The doctors rushed Antonio into the emergency room. It was his blood pressure. It had risen dangerously. The stress of everything that was happening had taken a toll on his heart. Clara waited in the waiting room, crying softly, while Gabriel paced back and forth, trying to think, trying to find a way out. But it seemed the more he fought, the deeper they sank. That's when Marcelo appeared. He walked into the hospital with Fernanda and a man in a suit Gabriel didn't recognize. They walked straight to the reception. Gabriel approached them. "What are you doing here?" Marcelo looked at his brother with an expression that mixed false concern with something much worse, something that looked like triumph. "We're his children too, Gabriel. We have a right to know how our father is." "You have no rights. You put him in this situation." The man in the suit stepped forward. "I'm Dr. Pimentel, the Mendez family's lawyer, and actually, we have every right. In fact, we've brought some documents that need to be reviewed by the medical team." "What documents?" Dr. Pimentel opened a folder and pulled out some papers. Gabriel took them and started to read. He felt the blood freeze in his veins. It was a petition for legal incapacitation. Marcelo was asking to have their parents declared incapable of making their own decisions. He alleged that Antonio and Clara were senile, confused, and easily manipulated, and he requested that a legal guardian be appointed to make decisions for them. And who did Marcelo suggest as the guardian? Himself. "You're not going to do this," Gabriel said, his voice trembling with rage. "We're already doing it. The social worker has been notified. She's coming here to assess their mental condition, and when she confirms what we already know, that they no longer have the capacity to decide for themselves, the judge will appoint me as their legal guardian. They are not incapable. They are lucid. They are confused, Gabriel. They let you turn them against their own family, against the children who took care of them for years. That's not the action of someone in their right mind." Fernanda stepped closer with that cynical smile Gabriel was learning to hate. "And when Marcelo is appointed guardian, he'll be able to make all the decisions for them, including about properties, inheritances, land, everything. There it was. They knew about the land, and now they had a plan to take total control over their parents and everything they owned. Gabriel looked out the waiting room window. He saw his mother sitting alone, hunched over, crying softly. He saw his father being treated inside, weak, sick, destroyed by what his own children had done to him. And for the first time since this all started, Gabriel felt he might have reached the end of the line, that maybe he couldn't save his parents, that maybe Marcelo would actually win. He walked away without another word and sat next to his mother. He took her hand. "Son, I just want peace," she said, her voice broken. "I can't take all this fighting anymore. If Marcelo wants everything, let him have it. We don't need any of it." "Mom, don't say that." "I'm tired, Gabriel, so tired." That night, with his father stable and sleeping in the hospital room, Gabriel sat in the hallway with his head in his hands. Everything had fallen apart. The injunction, the lies on social media, the incapacitation petition, his father in the hospital. It was too much, too heavy. His phone rang. It was Dr. Henrique. Gabriel answered, devoid of energy. "Gabriel, where are you?" "At the hospital. My father got sick." "Is he okay?" "He's stable, but the situation is terrible, doctor." Marcelo filed for incapacitation. "If he gets it, he'll have control over everything." There was a silence on the other end. Then Dr. Henrique spoke, and there was something different in his voice. "Gabriel, I found something. Something that changes everything completely." Gabriel shot up from his chair. "What?" "I can't talk over the phone. I need to show you in person. Where is this hospital?" 20 minutes later, Dr. Henrique walked into the hospital with a folder under his arm and an expression Gabriel couldn't decipher. It wasn't just seriousness. It was something more, something that looked like hope, mixed with indignation. "What did you find?" Dr. Henrique opened the folder on the small hallway table, pulling out printed documents, bank statements, printed WhatsApp conversations, emails. "I hired an investigator too, and he discovered something about your brother you need to see." Gabriel took the papers and began to read, and the more he read, the wider his eyes grew. The war had just turned. Gabriel stared at the papers Dr. Henrique had just laid out before him. Bank statements, printed WhatsApp conversations, emails, collection notices. The more he read, the more his jaw dropped. "Your brother is bankrupt," Dr. Henrique said with a firm voice. "Completely bankrupt." The statements showed it all. Marcelo had absurd debts, loans from multiple banks, maxed out credit cards, and overdue financing. He owed over $200,000 and had no way to pay it back. How did he get so deep in debt? Bad investments. He started that business he mentioned to you, remember? It failed in 6 months and he lost everything. Then he started taking out loan after loan to cover the holes. Gabriel continued to examine the documents. There were protest notices, threats of legal action, collectors calling dozens of times a day. Marcelo was desperate, and in that desperation, he decided to steal from his own parents. "Look at these dates here," Dr. Henrique pointed. "The first major collection notice arrived in the same month he convinced your father to sign the power of attorney. It's no coincidence." But there was more, much more. Dr. Henrique showed WhatsApp conversations between Marcelo and Fernanda, messages the investigator had managed to recover. "Marcelo, we need to do something about the old folks. They're getting in the way of everything." Fernanda's reply, "Just kick them out. Say they didn't follow the rules." Marcelo, "What if Gabriel finds out?" Fernanda, "He doesn't even care about them anymore. He's rich, he's forgotten his family, he'll never know." Gabriel felt his stomach turn reading it. They had planned everything, coldly and cynically. "There's more." Dr. Henrique turned a few pages. "Look at this." It was a message exchange between Marcelo and an IT technician. Marcelo, "Can you edit a digital signature?" Technician, "Depends. What for?" Marcelo, "I need some documents signed by my father, but he's not in a condition to sign." Technician, "Man, that's illegal." Marcelo, "I'll pay well." Gabriel dropped the paper on the table. "He tried to forge our father's signature." He tried. The technician refused, but the record of the attempt remains, and that's extremely serious. It's attempted embezzlement with a forged document. And the money I sent? Dr. Henrique showed Marcelo's bank statements. All of Gabriel's transfers were there, but instead of being used for their parents, the money went directly to pay off debts, loans, cards, interest. He didn't spend a single cent on your parents. Zero. All the money you sent for almost 2 years went to cover his debts. Gabriel leaned against the hospital corridor wall. He felt the urge to punch something, to scream, but he controlled himself. He needed to be strategic. So what do we do with this? We use all of it. Tomorrow is the hearing for the incapacitation, remember? The social worker will assess whether your parents are competent or not, and I'm going to present all of this to the judge. Will this stop the incapacitation? It will do much more than that. It will show that Marcelo acted in bad faith from the beginning, that he manipulated, lied, and stole. The judge won't just deny the incapacitation, he'll open an investigation against Marcelo. The next morning, Gabriel woke up early, got his parents ready, and explained everything that was going to happen. His mother, Clara, was nervous. His father, Antonio, still weak from the hospital, tried to appear strong. "Son, what if they manage to say we're not in our right minds?" "They won't, Dad, I promise." At the courthouse, the room was full. Marcelo and Fernanda were already there with their lawyer, Dr. Pimentel. There was a social worker, a psychologist, the judge, everyone waiting to decide the fate of Gabriel's parents. The social worker began by asking his parents simple questions. "What day is it today? Where do you live? Who are these people?" Antonio and Clara answered everything correctly. They were lucid, coherent, and in full possession of their mental faculties. But Marcelo's lawyer didn't give up. He argued that the parents were being manipulated by Gabriel, that they lacked the judgment to make important decisions about assets, that they needed a guardian. That's when Dr. Henrique requested to speak. "Your Honor, I would like to present some evidence that completely changes this situation." He placed the documents on the table one by one. The bank statements showing the debts, the messages showing the plan, the forgery attempt, everything. The courtroom fell into absolute silence. The judge picked up the papers and began to read. His expression changed from neutral to serious, from serious to indignant. "Dr. Pimentel, is your client seeing this?" Marcelo had turned pale. Fernanda was staring at the floor. Their lawyer stammered, "Your Honor, I was not aware of this information." "Well, you should have been, because what I'm seeing here is not a son concerned for his parents. It's someone trying to appropriate assets using lies, manipulation, and even attempted forgery." The judge turned to Marcelo. "Do you have anything to say in your defense?" Marcelo opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Fernanda nudged him, whispered something, but he remained silent. "Very well. The petition for incapacitation is denied. Mr. and Mrs. Antonio and Clara Mendez are in full possession of their mental faculties and can make their own decisions. Furthermore, I am ordering the opening of an investigation against Mr. Marcelo Mendez for embezzlement, fraudulent misrepresentation, and manipulation of vulnerable individuals." Clara began to cry. Antonio held her hand. Gabriel felt a wave of relief so immense he had to sit down. "As for the disputed land," the judge continued, "I am ordering that the registration process be resumed immediately in favor of the legitimate owners, Mr. and Mrs. Antonio and Clara. Any attempt by Mr. Marcelo to appropriate this property is hereby nullified." Marcelo stood up, staggering. Fernanda grabbed onto him. The two left the courtroom under the gaze of everyone, defeated, humiliated, exposed. When everyone else had left, Gabriel hugged his parents in the courthouse hallway. His mother was crying, but now it was from relief, from freedom. His father smiled for the first time in weeks. "It's over, son. It's over, Dad. You're free. Everything will be yours again." That afternoon, back at the hotel, Dr. Henrique appeared with more news. "The registry office has already given the green light. We can register the land in your names this week." His parents looked at each other. Antonio took his wife's hand. "Doctor, we need to talk about that." "About what?" "About what we're going to do with this land." Gabriel looked at his parents, confused. "Dad, the land is yours. You can do whatever you want with it." "Exactly. And we've already decided. We're not going to sell it, Clara said, shaking her head. We've spent our whole lives suffering. We've seen so many people in the same situation as us. Elderly people abandoned, cast aside, forgotten by their own families. And we want to do something for those people. Antonio continued. We want to use this land to build a place where elderly people with nowhere to go can stay, with dignity, with respect, with love. Gabriel felt his eyes well up with tears. You want to create a shelter? More than a shelter, his mother said. A home where no one is treated like a burden, where everyone has value, where people can grow old with their heads held high. Dr. Henrique smiled. That's beautiful, but it will require a lot of money to build and maintain. We'll sell the land, Antonio said. Use half the money to build, and the other half will be invested to keep the place running. Gabriel hugged his parents. These two simple people who had been humiliated, betrayed, thrown onto the street, still had hearts big enough to think of others. And Marcelo? His mother asked softly. What will happen to him? He will answer for what he did. The justice system will take care of it. But he's my son too, Clara said, her voice thick with emotion. I know, Mom, but he made choices, and choices have consequences. That night, Gabriel was on the hotel balcony looking at the city lights when his phone rang. It was an unknown number. He answered. Gabriel. It was Marcelo's voice, but not the arrogant voice from before. It was broken, desperate. I need to talk to you. There's nothing to talk about. Please, just 5 minutes. I'm begging you. Gabriel was about to hang up, but something made him hesitate. Speak. I ruined everything. I know that. I lost my parents. I lost my brother. I'm going to lose my house. I'm going to be investigated. It's all over for me. You did this to yourself. I know. But I need you to know one thing. In the beginning, when I took the house, when I started using the money you sent, I convinced myself I was doing the right thing. That I deserved it. That I was the son who stayed, who carried the weight. But then it became a snowball, and by the time I realized, I had gone too far. Gabriel said nothing. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I regret it. Truly. Regret doesn't give back the time they spent on the street, Marcelo. It doesn't erase the humiliation, the pain, the fear. Actions have consequences, and you'll have to live with yours. Gabriel hung up, staring at the phone in his hand. Part of him felt pity for his brother, but the larger part remembered his parents shivering in the cold on that sidewalk. And that memory was stronger than any pity. 6 months later, Gabriel stood in front of a once empty lot that now held a beautiful 3-story building. The walls were painted in light colors, with large windows letting the sun in, and well-tended gardens out front. A new sign shone at the entrance. New Beginnings Home, a shelter for the elderly. The construction had been swift. The land was sold for $9 million. Half was used to build the facility, and the other half was invested to keep it running for years to come. The home had capacity for 40 people, with individual rooms, common areas, a library, a spacious dining hall, and a complete infirmary, everything designed to provide dignity. Today was the inauguration. People from all over the city were there. The mayor came, journalists, cameras. But the most important attendees were the simple people, elderly individuals who had been abandoned by their families, who lived on the streets, who had nowhere to go. They were there, dressed in new clothes with fresh haircuts, their eyes shining. Some cried with emotion, others smiled shyly. They all knew this place would change their lives. Gabriel looked at his parents. Antonio and Clara were on a makeshift stage in front of the building. His father had gained weight and had his healthy color back. His mother wore a beautiful dress Gabriel had bought for her. The two stood hand in hand, looking at it all as if they couldn't believe it was real. The mayor gave a speech about the importance of caring for the elderly. A social worker spoke about family abandonment and how revolutionary this project was. But when it was his parents' turn to speak, it was different. Antonio approached the microphone, his voice trembling at first. I'm not good at giving speeches. I'm a simple man who worked with his hands his whole life. But I've learned something in these last few months. I learned that you never know the value you have until you lose everything. He looked at Clara. My wife and I raised 3 children. We gave them everything we could, and a little of what we couldn't. We thought that was enough, that love was enough. But life showed us it wasn't. 2 of our children became people we don't recognize. People who put money above family, who put greed above gratitude. His voice failed him. Clara squeezed his hand. But one of our sons, the one who left to build his own life, was the only one who came back when we needed him most. He was the only one who held our hand when the world collapsed. And this son taught us something else. That real family isn't about who shares your blood. It's about who stays when the storm comes. Some people in the audience began to cry. This place here isn't just a building, it's a promise. The promise that no one will be forgotten, that everyone deserves to age with dignity, that no matter what happens, there will always be someone who cares. Antonio stepped away from the microphone. Clara hugged him. The audience erupted in applause. Then, it was Gabriel's turn to speak. He went up on stage, looked at the crowd, looked at his parents, and took a deep breath. I built a company from scratch, made money, bought things, achieved what the world calls success. And for a long time, I thought that was the most important thing. I thought I needed to be far away, working, growing, accumulating. He paused. Until I came home one rainy day and found my parents sitting on the sidewalk, drenched, shivering with cold, in front of their own house. In that moment, everything I had built was worthless, because I had failed at the only thing that truly matters. I had let the people I love most become vulnerable. Gabriel looked at his parents on the stage. My brother Marcelo made terrible choices. He stole, lied, betrayed, and now he's paying for it. He lost his house, he's under investigation, he lost his family, and I don't take pleasure in this. I feel sadness because he had everything I had, the same parents, the same values, the same opportunities, but he chose the wrong path. The audience was in complete silence. My parents could have used this money to live in luxury. They could have bought a mansion, traveled the world, enjoyed every cent. No one would have judged them, they deserved it, but they made a different choice. They looked at their own suffering and thought, how many other people are going through the same thing? And they decided to do something about it. Gabriel felt his voice crack, but he continued. Today, 40 people will have a real home, a place where they are not a burden, where they are not forgotten, where they have value. And this isn't just because of the money. It's because of 2 people who, even after losing everything, even after being betrayed by their own children, still managed to find kindness within themselves. He turned to his parents. Dad, Mom, I've apologized to you several times over these last few months. Sorry for not coming back sooner. Sorry for leaving you alone. Sorry for believing that money solved everything. But you taught me something that no business school teaches. You taught me that true success is not how much you accumulate, it's how much you multiply. It's not what you have, it's what you do with what you have. Clara was crying. Antonio was wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. I read a quote the other day that said, "No one should die alone, but we should all live accompanied." And that's what this place represents. Companionship, dignity, love. The things my parents never had when they were thrown onto the street. The things they have ensured other people will have. Gabriel looked at the audience again. So today isn't just about inaugurating a building. Today is about inaugurating a different way of seeing the world. A way where we don't abandon those who grow old. Where we don't forget those who cared for us. Where we understand that one day we will all need someone. And when that day comes, may we find people who treat us with the same respect we would have liked to treat others. He took one last pause. His voice came out firm, clear, charged with emotion. Storms may come, betrayals may come. They can try to take your house, your money, your possessions. But there is one thing that no one can ever steal from you. Your dignity, your character, the way you treat people. And in the end, When everything passes, when the dust settles, that is all that will remain. Not what you had, but who you were. And if you were someone who extended a hand when others turned their backs, who gave hope when there was only despair, who chose love when it was easier to choose hate, then you truly lived. And that is the only success that matters. The audience rose to its feet. Applause echoed. People were crying openly. Gabriel came down from the stage and hugged his parents. The three of them stood there, embraced, as dozens of elderly people approached to thank them. A man in his 70s who had lived on the street for 2 years held Antonio's hand. "Thank you for not forgetting about us." Clara hugged a crying woman. "No one will be forgotten anymore, I promise." That afternoon, after everyone had left, Gabriel stayed with his parents on the shelter's porch, watching the sun set. His mother rested her head on his shoulder. "Son, do you think Marcelo will be okay?" "I don't know, Mom. He lost a lot. The investigation is still ongoing, but he made his choices, and now he has to deal with them. I still pray for him every night. He's my son, despite everything." "I know, and that shows who you are." His father, Antonio, looked at the building behind them. "You know what's funny? We spent our whole lives with nothing, and when a fortune finally came along, we discovered it wasn't the money we needed. It was purpose." Gabriel smiled. "And you found it?" "No, son. We always had it. We just needed to go through the storm to remember." The three of them stayed there, watching the night arrive. A family that had been lost and found. A story that began with abandonment and ended with redemption. A lesson that would echo far beyond that small town, because in the end, what remains are not the houses, the cars, the numbers and bank accounts. What remains are the moments, the hugs, the choices we make when no one is looking, the hand we extend when it would be easier to turn our backs. And that night, as 40 elderly people slept for the first time in months with the certainty that they had a home, Antonio and Clara proved that the greatest inheritance one can leave is not measured in money. It's measured in lives touched, in hopes renewed, in dignity restored. And that is something no one can ever steal.